Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Professional Insights brought to you by the National Referral Network. Today, we are going to debunk the top 10 retirement myths with Mike Clarke, co-founder of Protection Point Advisors and author of the book, A Firm Worth Building. And as a firm, Protection Point Advisors specializes in building clients' digital family offices, making sure that all the aspects of someone's financial plan are working together to eliminate some confusion, which we're going to debunk some of these. But before we get started, hit that like and subscribe button. Put any questions you have in the comments. We'll make sure to get to those. But without any further ado, let's get started. Good morning, Mike.
Yo,
How are you?
I am here.
Yes, you are.
I have my coffee, so I may actually be lucid.
Okay. Well, look, I think some of these questions, you've been in the business a long time, Mike.
Yeah.
So I mean, yes, I appreciate that you are awake and lucid because it is early out in California right now.
Right.
But some of these, off, kind of like the back of your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, most of them. I mean, I've heard these throughout the, over 3 decades, if you may say so, that I've been in the business now. You hear a lot of this stuff. So, yeah, let's just go through them one by one. I mean, there's some validity here, but not quite what people think.
Perfect. So the first one is a lot of people think that they need $1 million to retire comfortably. So can you explain why this figure might not be accurate for everyone and how personalized retirement planning can really help get a real number for them?
Well, it all depends upon what you need. I mean, retirement is about income need, and it's about income sustainability. How much do you need and for how long? And since people are living longer, chances are that need may stretch, I don't know, 15, 20, 25, 30 years plus. So people could be living 1/3 of their lives in retirement. That's a long, long time. And by the way, that's way longer than it was ever envisioned back in the 1930s, for example, when Social Security first was enacted in 1935. So, things have changed. So it just depends on how, if you could retire on $1 million if you want to live in North Dakota, I guess. Not that no disrespect to North Dakota, but it's a lot cheaper to live there. If you want to retire in New York, you could have $1 million. You could retire on $1 million today and live comfortably until next Wednesday. I mean, it really just kind of depends on what the need is. So these are financial planning questions. These things should be calculated on an individual basis based upon what you need to live on, what you hopefully something comfortable, and then do the math on how long it might last. It actually might be a higher number, actually might be a lower number, depending upon what's going on.
Okay. And we're going to, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because some of these talk to that specifically, right? Because one of the other myths is Social Security will cover my expenses. And you mentioned Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been seen as a safety net for retirees, but I don't think that was really the intention back in the 1930s. And there is some misconception about, one, it'll do that, but there's also some misconception about how it's invested and if it's going to be around. And so
we can leave that to the side because that's a whole nother discussion. Look, I have a client who all she does is live on her Social Security. She's got well over $1 million in other places, okay, that she doesn't touch because she just doesn't live on very much. Everything's paid for. She doesn't spend very much. And so it's not like she can't access more money. She just doesn't need to. So there are people that do that. Most people, though, have lifestyles and needs that are beyond what Social Security will provide. So no, it was never meant to be anyone's retirement. It was actually supposed to be 1/3 personal savings, 1/3 pension, because everybody had a pension then, or at least a lot of people did. And number 3, Social Security. So it was a third, a third, a third. And you were only supposed to live 5 years. Okay. Yeah. So we're in a very different world now.
So Mike, let's take a little bit of a sidestep because I think this is a great point for people to understand is the third, a third, a third is understanding all of the tools available to someone through retirement, right? There's Social Security, there's savings, there's 401ks, there's IRAs, there's tools like reverse mortgages, if applicable.
If applicable. Yeah.
Understanding that there are more than one tool to get the job done.
Well, yeah. Again, I keep going back to financial planning. But most people don't have a fully fleshed out financial plan that they understand, that they can look at and go, okay, this is my plan for retirement financially, and I know it works. So as long as I stay within certain boundaries, in terms of consumption boundaries, primarily the money that I spend, things work. Most people don't have that. Okay.
Yep.
And so then we get into other things like, well, what about just the 4% rule, which actually is sort of reliable. It's about, I don't think the 4% rule ever fully considered that people would live as long as they are today in retirement. Okay. But it's a decent rule of thumb if you want to do the math simply. Okay. And it means take whatever you have, multiply it by 4%, put it into a moderately diversified portfolio. That's the other part of the 4% rule that doesn't get spoken about, which is it's based on it being invested moderately. And if you do all that, chances are the money lasts around 30 years. Okay. So it doesn't account for people living longer than that. And it also doesn't account for periods where other things may intercede, like other expenses, like I guess the biggest risk is incapacity and what it costs to pay for people to come in and care for you, or to be maybe an assisted living facility or something like that. All these things can play a part.
And we're going to get to that one.
Rules yeah.
Which, by the way, the 4% rule is a myth. So we'll go ahead and check that one off the list. One of the things that we all understand, sometimes bad things happen. We don't plan for them. Some individuals assume that they can just always extend their working years if they need more savings. How does that play as a risk, using that assumption in planning for some of those unforeseen circumstances that you kind of just alluded to?
Well, look, it's different for I don't know that's a dangerous assumption. I mean, if you're in good health and you want to work as long as you can, I mean, I've always been an advocate for that, frankly. I mean, Warren Buffett is 95?
Yeah.
Okay? He's still going to work. Okay.
Yep.
So people are living longer. They're working longer. I think that's a good thing. I think staying engaged occupationally for as long as possible is health inducing. And I think the data bears that out.
Yeah.
The question is, what would you expect your income to be? And maybe you don't want to overestimate how long you would work for that income. So that one's a double-edged sword. I think people should work longer if they can, even if you have enough money to retire, because I think, again, I think it's a healthy thing to do. But it's up to you whether you make it a variable in your financial plan. If you're going to, I would hedge a little bit and not overestimate it.
Yep. Yeah. And I agree, Mike. I mean, there's certainly a lot of data that indicates continue to work if you can does help prevent cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
It's socialization. There's a lot of benefits to working.
Yeah.
Yep. So as we move into retirement, there's a widespread, or might not be widespread, but there is a myth that people believe that living expenses will actually decrease in retirement. Do you find that to be true?
Well, you do in some cases. People sometimes pay off their homes. I think the biggest expense that leaves is kids and family. I mean, if you're paying for kids, putting them through college, it saddens me when I see retirees still paying for their kids on some level. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's unavoidable. But, I think the major expenses that leave are kids and mortgages, things like that. So it is possible that your living expenses actually do go down in a lot of cases. But people also like to, spend additional money. I mean, 30-year-old houses need fixing up, and remodel, like we want to remodel the bathroom, so there can be other expenses that show up. And also most people that retire want to kind of get out and see the world a little bit, and that costs money too. Okay.
Right.
They want to have experiences that they've not been able to have up until this point. So there can be some shifting. I would say that expenses, by and large, probably decline a little bit, but not as much as people think.
Yep. And that kind of goes to the next one about spending less in retirement, right? You mentioned that, you want to go on vacations. There are certain things, and a lot of people now, because of interest rates, are actually renovating their homes. But how can a digital family office help clients create that realistic expectation and budget for those life experiences?
Well, you said a key thing there, budget. Most people don't have one.
Hmm. Fair enough.
I mean, if you're going to develop a full, and again, we're hitting this hard, but this is so important to have a fully fleshed out financial plan, a financial plan that tells you what your future likely looks like. That's really financially, that's really what a well-built financial plan is. But it also has to consider what your consumption needs are, and only you know what those are. Okay. If you don't know what those are, which is probably the case with about half of everyone, there's a few easy ways to get there. I mean, there are technologies out there. Mint is one that's been around for a long, long time, where it will pull your banking data and it will kind of build you this ad hoc budget really quick. It goes back 3 months and it'll kind of show you a snapshot of how you spend money. The banking apps now do all that stuff. The B of A, Chase, Wells Fargo, they all have that now. So everybody's moving towards this engine that will show you how you consume. So you can do this really quickly if you want to. If you want to kick it old school and just get out a piece of paper and a pen and go back through your transactions for 3 months and categorize stuff, you could do that. But however it is you get there, you got to get there. You got to get, okay, what does it take to live? You got to get to that number. Because if you can get to that number, then people like me can build a financial plan that's much more meaningful, because it's much more custom designed, because it's now something that's relative to you. It's not relative to some arbitrary number that I would pull out of the air based upon what you have. Yeah, you got a pension that's going to pay you this. You got Social Security. You got your investments. Then you can sustain this much income. But I don't know if that income fits what you want. Okay.
Right.
So I'd rather custom fit it to what you want. So that's the whole idea. Do not take rules of thumb. Do not do this basically. This is something that has to be done in the specific, and it's got to be done specific to you.
And I love that you said, the apps, right? Because I use one. But then the first thing I thought about was going back to the old school and balancing checkbooks.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Putting things into a ledger.
Right.
So another myth, Mike, and we're getting close to the end here. Healthcare costs are always a major concern as we get older. And sometimes clients don't plan for those. So what are some of the steps that clients can do to plan for the absolute unknown?
Well, again, that's a tough one. So Medicare will cover the lion's share of a retiree's medical expense, but it won't cover all of it. Okay. So there's Part B, there's Senior Advantage if you want to go that route. And then there's the drug stuff, which is Medicare Part D, which is a whole nother universe unto itself. So there are ancillary medical expenses that retirees should plan for in retirement. But it's difficult to say what those are going to look like. I just think it's part of the financial planning discussion. Like, we got to build this into what your expense load looks like, so you're not surprised by it. Okay. And in some cases that can include, modest deductibles and things like that. I am no Medicare expert. We have Medicare experts though on our team. It's very, very critical that, if you have advisors, whether it's a financial advisor, whether it's, an attorney, most people have a tax person, all those people should be working together, and they should be bouncing questions off one another for your sake. And maybe one of the experts on that team, as you get into retirement, is a Medicare expert, somebody who can, I'm dating myself. I have to enroll in Medicare in another 2 months. Okay. Right. So I will be taking a trip to the Social Security offices to do all that stuff. Okay. And I will be getting the best advice I can get about Part B, Part C, what have you, Senior Advantage, so that my medical care is covered in the best way possible.
And like those change, it's a state thing. It's a federal thing. Mm-hmm. Those regulations change. So like it's extremely important. This is not a set it and forget it type
No,
thing, correct?
no,
Okay.
no.
I mean, neither is your financial plan. It lives with you and it moves with you. So I might want to throw that
Well,
out there.
look, you can think of it this way. You go to your doctor more when you get older. And the reason you do that is because you have to pay more attention to your health when you get older. It's just
Yeah.
what we do. Okay. And you go to a doctor because the doctor has information about you and your health that you don't have. Your doctor has the ability to examine you in a way that you can't. Okay. But it's a partnership. My doctor can't make me stop, I don't know, eating steak if I should stop eating steak if I
Yeah.
have cardiac issues. Um, I have to do my part, and I think the relationship that clients have with their advisors is precisely that, especially with your financial advisors, whose job it is and should be to keep you financially healthy as long as possible. It's the same job your doctor has, so you can view it in the same context because they run on precisely parallel lines.
Right. So we're down, I think, the last three here. So you mentioned earlier, Mike, about paying off a house.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And so one of the myths that came up was downsizing could be an option. But in my opinion, and I just want to get your thoughts on this, is that, I mean, look at the environment today. If you're relying on selling a home or downsizing a home for retirement, and then an environment like this comes up, that could create some challenges, right? Because now not only are you selling your home, but there's a replacement cost.
There is, and doing it in a high interest rate environment is disadvantageous, certainly to sellers, and it has been. Although oddly enough, in some areas, it just really hasn't affected things
Right.
at all.
Yep.
So it really, it's so real estate is area specific. It's almost zip code specific.
Right.
Okay. But really, I mean, that can work. The question always is, I can sell my home. Great. Do you want to sell your home?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to sell your home and move to an area that, and a lot of people do. A lot of people move to areas where you find a lot of retirees. I grew up going to Lake County in Northern California when I was a kid. A lot of retirees up there. A lot of people moved up from the Bay Area and they bought these very, very small houses, and there's a lot of senior citizens around. So you see communities like that. Okay. But it's always a question of, is it a compromise that you have to make, or is it a choice you want to make?
Right. Understood. And so the last two, we're going to go back to the beginning.
Right.
In terms of age, a lot of younger people. I mean, I know the environment today is a little bit challenging from what I'm reading, but younger individuals often think that they have plenty of time to start saving for retirement. And so why is it so critical to start early, and strategies that young professionals can adopt to get started early?
Well, look, success in this realm is about habit. It's not, I started here, I started when I was 30 as opposed to started when I was 40 or whatever. It's not about age. It's about developing the habits that create success as early as possible. It's like, in that way, it's like eating and exercising. If you learn how to eat and exercise early in life, that'll become part of your life, and you'll wind up being healthier than people that don't do that. Okay. Yeah. So it really is about that. Look, this goes back thousands of years, where the great sages were saying, always save 10% of whatever it is you earn. Take 10% of your gold shekels or whatever it was used way back. They've been saying this for a long, long time. So this really is about habit. I can say if you start in your 20s because you're just doing it as a matter of habit, it's very common for you to get in your 40s. I see this a lot. You're in your 40s, and all of a sudden you're on a path to have different choices than 90% of the people out there. Yeah. Okay. So because you're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, you've actually built some net worth that may not be substantial yet, but understand the growth of one's net worth over one's life cycle. It's the 80-20 rule. The last 20% of time, it's a time plus money equation. Yeah. The last 20% of time will account for 80% of the success. Okay. So if you look at it on that continuum, that's why it's so important to start early, because you give yourself so much momentum that's going to work for you huge as you get further into the process.
And with everything, Mike, and this is the last one here, with everything, you got Betterment, crypto, real estate platforms, all these things that are completely accessible to us. Many people believe that they don't need professional help. And so what are some of the benefits of working with a firm, specifically one that creates these digital family offices, to help create this more robust strategy?
Look, you can be your own doctor. A lot of people are, okay, and a lot of people do
Self-medicate.
that.
Sure.
And yeah, or you can take medical advice. You can, I don't know, you can take medical advice from somebody who has a radio show. I mean, to me, that's like, for those of you who remember the Beverly Hillbillies, that's like taking medical advice from Granny Clampett. But that's, hey, that you can do it, okay?
You can do it. Yep.
Really, at the end of the day, you hire for what you either can't do yourself or don't feel you can do yourself, or you hire somebody who can save you from yourself. And money is super emotional. And some people hire advisors because they want an objective voice, and they want due diligence and intelligence and expertise that they don't have. Mm-hmm. It's a really, again, to use my medical analogy, it's the same reason you go to a doctor. You go to a doctor because a doctor has a certain level of expertise that you don't have. Are doctors perfect? No. Okay. Do they know everything? No. But they probably, by and large, increase the odds of your success and elevate things to another level. And so that's why. I mean, it's if you take a common sense approach to this, yeah, you can do a lot of stuff yourself in today's world, but a lot of the information out there is just not so good. As a matter of fact, some of it's downright bad.
Yep. And
it's very hard to know the difference these days. So, and I think rich people, this bears mentioning too, people who are really wealthy understand that the reason they're wealthy is they're really good at just a few things. Okay. So what they do is they start to just do those things at the expense of everything else. Everything else gets hired out to other people because they understand the more they do those few things, the wealthier they get. So they're not trying to be experts in everything. So I think there's a danger in trying to be an expert in everything, which you easily can anoint yourself with all the information that's out there today. I think, look, I'm biased, but I do this in my life. I mean, I hire experts to do the stuff I either don't want to do or can't do or both.
And Mike, I think it's important because we see a lot of clients that'll stay with their CPA, right? And so I think it's an important thing to state that, to your analogy, going to a doctor. If you go to a doctor and they're a whack job, go to another doctor.
Go to another doctor.
Right? If you interview a financial advisor and he's off his rocker or her rocker and they're not talking to you and you got that gut feeling, go to another financial advisor. There's a lot of them out there.
There's a lot of them out there. Look, the litmus test there is, are they listening to you? Did you leave the interaction feeling like they got you, or at least tried? Okay.
Right.
Because that's the biggest litmus test. And then after that, they obviously have to know what they're doing. They have to be working with a firm that has a good sized muscle, and all that. But the main thing is, do you connect with them?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't, leave.
No.
CPA, attorney, plumber, car mechanic, pick one. Doesn't matter. Feel free to fire them.
Yeah, the tarot card reader,
whatever. Yeah.
Whoever, right? Yeah.
The ball. I mean, the crystal ball.
That's
right. Fire them too. Awesome. Well, Mike, I appreciate it. Those are the top 10 myths about retirement planning. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. We'll get to them. But thank you, Mike, for the time. It's always great to have you here.
Hey, this is always fun, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Bye.